Hello, dear friends. There is a lot of information coming out on this subject, but I try to summarize as best as I can. Natural law is also in vogue, but I have not yet mastered that other subject. Opinion piece. Basel is going to regulate cryptos. They want to lower the risk of the system. The aim is to prevent the financing of crime. Hackers launder dirty crypto money. Bitcoin falls to its lowest level this week. 2/3 of bitcoins originate in China. Sweden's central bank tests its digital currency. Turkish lira plunges on gloomy political outlook. Cryptocurrency sector chips away at traditional bankers. Banks are in trouble as people default on their loans. Let's start. Basel plans to regulate banks' exposure to cryptocurrencies. The Basel Committee, made up of representatives of central banks and governments from the G20 plus Hong Kong and Singapore, has decided to offer certain basic economy policy guidelines to determine their use in order to lower the risk of banks' exposure to crypto assets, according to the financial consultancy Foster Swiss. Because cryptocurrencies do not meet the essential elements to be treated as money, they are qualified as crypto assets, making it necessary to regulate the information requirements for banks with respect to market risk and sovereign exposures. These measures are intended to identify, assess and reduce the risk of the banking system and avoid significant vulnerabilities they currently have with respect to crypto assets. International financial stability will depend to a large extent on the final implementation of the current Basel III standards and those to be developed from now on, as well as the security and robustness of banking entities worldwide. The objective is the regulation, supervision and risk management of banks against cryptocurrencies. It is also intended to assess and monitor the global economic impact of low interest rates that may occur in a prolonged environment. The main problem faced by states in preventing fraud and the financing of illicit activities throughout this type of currency is precisely their lack of regulation and control, since they are not centralized and therefore lack control by a central entity, government or bank. The global network of expertise in auditing and internal control that Basel represents throughout its supervisory committee includes in its program from the 2021 and 2022 fiscal year a regulatory framework that will govern the exposure of banks and cryptocurrency, thus allowing auditors to have certain common tools for action. This would lower the risk throughout a more prudent treatment of banks' exposure to crypto assets and by offering a working methodology and international best practices in this regard. Cryptocurrencies, which first emerged in the wake of the global financial crisis, offer the vision of money free from central bank control. Bitcoin, the most traded cryptocurrency by volume, has a market value of around $700 billion according to CoinMarketCap, but can suffer huge losses with a single tweet. Lawmakers have become increasingly concerned by launching crackdowns and regulatory consultations about the potential consequences of cryptocurrency markets. Banks. Sweden's central bank to test digital currency. The Riksbank plans to test its proposed central bank digital currency with commercial bank Handelsbanken as it moves from having only simulated participants. ECB leans into better euro rally. The euro's charge toward the 3-year high is faltering as the European Central Bank quashes expectations that it is close to tapering emergency stimulus. Cryptocurrency sector signs up traditional bankers. The pace of which top talent from the financial environment is moving into the cryptocurrency sector has increased, according to headhunters and industry experts. Huge gains in the value of digital assets have seen cryptocurrency firms attract executives from some of the largest firms in the traditional finance sector, who were previously unattainable. SoftBank unveils its bets, and cryptocurrencies are not among them. SoftBank's CEO remains unclear on whether they are a bubble, hype, or something to be trusted. In quotes, "I don't criticize people with an interest in cryptocurrencies. We have a lot of financial services companies within the funds, and I am open to have any discussion, to learn, to consider it, but at the moment we don't have a major presence." Banks are in trouble. Banks are in trouble because people are not paying back their loans. If people are not making as much money as when they were working, especially small businesses. So, banks are not getting interest payments by default. In fact, there were already problems in the subprime markets before the health crisis. Subprime credit card defaults on auto loans are on the rise. That will only increase with millions of people unemployed. Bankers are staring into the abyss. Banks are insolvent by design even now when the economy is overheating. The more insolvent they are, the more they fleece the ship. It's all perfectly legal, of course. Now people are starting to realize that they have been financing compulsive gamblers with unsecured loans at a 25% interest rate on their bank deposits. Fed admonishes Deutsche Bank for continued compliance failures. The Federal Reserve has privately told Deutsche Bank that its compliance programs are not up to par, indicating that the scandal-plagued bank is not complying with a series of previous agreements with US regulators. Digital news. Bitcoin falls to its lowest level this week. Bitcoin lost 8.2% and of its value on Friday to $35,339 un unit, its lowest level this week, while it has already lost nearly 40% of its value this month. Bitcoin falls 5.2% on Saturday, and Ether drops 6.3%. Bitcoin falls 5.16% to 33,849 and a half at 18 hours GMT on Saturday, losing 1,843 from its previous close. Bitcoin holders have no choice but to rely on Chinese crypto miners. 2/3 of the world's Bitcoin mining powerhouse is based in China, leaving the cryptocurrency potential vulnerable. Hackers launder dirty crypto money. SolarWinds hackers have again gone through US government departments. Microsoft said the Novelion Group, identified by the White House last month as part of Russia's foreign intelligence service, used USAID bulk email system provided by email marketing service Constant Contact to impersonate the U.S. International Development Agency. He sent emails to more than 3,000 accounts at some 150 government agencies, think tanks, consultancies, and not governmental organizations, reports Hannah Murphy. Cryptocurrencies fall, stocks soar. A new generation of day traders who chased thrills in the intense ups and downs of the markets is reasserting its dominance and driving up popular stocks as the price of cryptocurrencies falls. Shares of AMC Entertainment have surged more than 150% since Bitcoin began to wobble earlier this month, and have more than doubled this week alone. Brussels to investigate Facebook. Brussels is to open a formal investigation against Facebook for alleged anti-competitive practices, according to the Financial Times. In the crosshairs of the European Commission, Facebook Marketplace, the buy and sell function between individuals, which has more than 1 billion users. The European Union executive suspects an abuse of its dominant position on the small and ads market. USA. Wall Street advances unperturbed by rising inflation. Wall Street's major bearish rose Friday as investors ignored data showing a rise in inflation, although recent concern about the rise in prices kept the S&P 500 on track for its smaller monthly gain since February. Dollar rises ahead of inflation data. The dollar rose Friday morning in Asia, ahead of the release of the US inflation data. Sterling was down, but near a 3-month high, as expectations grow that the Bank of England could raise its interest rate sooner than planned. Treasuries fall. Treasury yields fell Friday in an abbreviated trading session of month-end purchases by reserve targets. The bond market closes early ahead of the Memorial Day holiday weekend. Stock market volatility. The next few months could easily see increased volatility in the markets as more people take time off from this Memorial Day weekend, which could exacerbate swings in the stocks and other financial assets. Betting on a volatile market. Some investors are revisiting a popular trade that has largely been out of favor since last year's market crash. Betting against stock market turbulence. Investors have also reaped big profits being against products designed to profit from volatile markets. Betting against volatility was a popular strategy in the months of placid trading leading up to the crisis, until markets crashed and volatility increased as the crisis spread around the world. Turkey. Turkish lira falls. The Turkish currency sank to a record low, weighted down by concerns that monetary policy remains to lose the curb, accelerating inflation. The lira slid as much as 1.1% to 8.6 per dollar, poised for a third daily decline this week. Losses were compounded as local accounts bought dollars ahead of large repayments of foreign currency debt. Turkey's central bank replaces executives. Turkey's central bank has replaced executives in some of its key departments, the latest step in a broader reshuffle that began with the ouster of a market-friendly governor. Gloomy economic outlook in Turkey. The Turkish lira fell to a new low against the dollar on Friday, pushing losses this month of 3% on growing concern that President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's policies have alienated foreign investors. Erdogan has fired 3 top central bank officials, including the governor, since March, adding to concerns that lawmakers won't be able to resist political pressure to reduce borrowing costs at the expense of curbing the country's double-digit inflation. The central bank cannot actively set the tone, and there has been a divergence with other emerging market currency on Turkey's idiosyncratic dynamics. The yellow metal. Gold posted 8% gain in May, best in 10 months. Gold climbed back above 1,900 an ounce on Friday, effectively crossing the May finish line with a near 8% gain that gave its best performance in 10 months. Gold rallies again on Friday. Gold futures rose back above 1,900 an ounce on Friday to post a gain of nearly 8% for the month. It's the same news said in another way. Is gold poised to rise further? Bullion is one of the best performing commodities this month, erasing almost all of this year's losses. Investors have been attracted by gold's appeal as a hedge against inflation. While the Federal Reserve maintains its monetary stimulus and says price pressures should prove temporary, spot gold was up 0.4% on Friday, capping a 4th straight weekly gain. British gold is very expensive. Gold stored at the Bank of England has recently sold for usually high premiums, indicating that central banks may again be buying into the market. The price of silver is lagging. Investment in renewable energy should change that. The price of silver is likely to rise if the administration renewable energy plan is approved, which will increase demand for the metal. Spain. Pensioners demonstrate in Spain. Collectives of pensioners have demonstrated this Saturday in 50 cities in defense of the public pension system and against reforms and cuts. Spain to welcome international cruise ships from June 7th. Spain will allow cruise ships to dock in its ports from June 7th, the Transport Ministry said Saturday, hoping to save the country's bad tourism sector in time for the summer season. US and NATO humiliate Spain with joint exercises with Morocco in the midst of the Spanish-Moroccan crisis. The US has confirmed in the midst of the Spanish-Moroccan crisis the holding next June between 7 and 18 of extensive multinational exercises in Western Sahara with Morocco. The African Lion 21, whose official objective is the fight against terrorism, will take place in the vicinity of the towns of Mabes, Dakhla and Tamtam, and will therefore include part of the Western Sahara, the zone in conflict between Morocco and Spain. Violent protests in Colombia leave at least 4 dead. Cali, epicenter of the protests in Colombia, lived this Friday a new violent day of anti-government demonstrations that left at least 4 dead in the 6th day of national strike, when a month of social unrest which have claimed dozens of lives. President Iván Duque has traveled to Cali and ordered the military deployment. I want to express my sincere condolences for all the victims. Miscellaneous news. Missile test fails. A US warship failed to intercept a medium-range ballistic missile test touched Saturday, the Missile Defense Agency said. Candidate to oversee Pentagon Special Forces suggests training Taiwanese guerrillas against possible Chinese invasion. Christopher Meyer, President Biden's nominee to oversee the Pentagon's Special Forces, suggested this week that U.S. officials should seriously consider making an effort to help Taiwan by training local troops against a possible Chinese invasion. U.S. soldiers accidentally leaked top-secret nuclear weapons locations in Europe. The vast amount of information that U.S. military personnel, especially those tasked with guarding nuclear weapons in plural, must know it's not easy to commit to memory, and some soldiers resorted to popular educational flashcard applications to memorize so many facts. Without realizing it, they thus leaked many details of the secret security protocols linked to nuclear weapons and inadvertently confirmed their deployment at all bases in Europe, where their presence was already suspected. Anxiety and depression over the economic crisis. Labor economist Bill Rogers said that for most Americans, this is probably the toughest year many have had in their entire lives. According to census data, the rate of anxiety and depression has skyrocketed. Before the health crisis, only 6% to 7% of the population identified themselves as anxious or depressed. Those figures increased from 25 to 30 in the midst of the crisis. Prayers and offerings at temple to goddess Corona in India. A temple dedicated to the Corona Devi or goddess Corona has been erected near the southern Indian city of Coimbatore as the country suffers a new wave. The temple manager says there has been an idea for years to worship disease-causing pathogens in the form of a goddess, in the belief that prayers will help alleviate the situation, like Santa Muerte in Mexico. In an innovative clinical trial, the first of its kind, a group of scientists have succeeded in turning back the biological clock of participants by up to 3 years in just 8 weeks throughout a combination of lifestyle and dietary changes. Remains of 215 children found at former Indian school in Canada. The remains of 215 toddlers, some as young as 3-year-old, were found at the site of a former residential school for Indians, a discovery Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau described Friday as heartbreaking. Biodiversity loss threatens human nutrition in the Amazon. There are fewer and fewer fish in the Peruvian Amazon, and therefore less and less food for its inhabitants. Now, a study warns that if this loss of biodiversity continues, the region could suffer a nutritional shortage that could not be compensated by alternatives such as aquaculture or chicken. Largest geoglyphs ever discovered in India. Two French researchers have discovered what may be the largest geoglyphs ever designed by humans in India's Thar Desert, according to research published this week in Archaeological Research in Asia. Independent researchers Carlo and Johan Oetheimer detected geoglyphs near the golden city of Jaisalmer using Google Earth during a virtual survey of the Thar Desert region, after which they used a drone or unnamed aerial vehicle to confirm they are existent. The scientists found several interconnected geometric patterns throughout the set, of which two engravings stand out, a giant spiral and a snake. Invisible sculpture sold. Italian plastic artist Salvatore Garau sold an invisible sculpture called Io Sono, I Am, valued at 15,000 euros. The final price of this unique work was 2.5 times higher than the initial price. The sculpture exists even throughout it cannot be seen, and has been created from energy, force and thoughts, Garau explains. The work is from 1953 and measures 1.5 meters on each side, says the Milanese auction house Art Rite. Right, but this seems like a joke. Curious rover captures clouds on Mars that glow at night. NASA on Saturday released images of unusual clouds that glow at night in Mars Gale crater, captured by the Curiosity rover. It is a compilation of a total of 21 photographs adapted for the human eye, which were taken by the apparatus last March in order to study this type of formations in the atmosphere of the red planet. Reset news. It seems imminent. The final touches are being made to prepare for the launch. When it happens, no one will know. It will just happen, and we won't know until afterwards. If for some reason it doesn't happen in a matter of days, don't lose hope or get upset if it takes a little longer. We are really there this time. It could go at the end of this month or within the first 2 weeks of June. This is a transition, not a transaction. Never give up. Source Dino recaps. Fear is a powerful thing if we give it power, and when you obey, you are giving away your power. A new world dawns. In a video recorded last May 13, David Wilcock verified a gene decode described as the Ascension event. Wilcock said, interplanetary climate change is the focal point for evidentiary support of the solar flash. We are seeing the entire solar system getting brighter. The sun appears brighter. The light is whiter. We have hundreds of data points for NASA about different anomalies occurring throughout our solar system because it is charging. Close quotes. As a reminder, this is what Gene Decode described as the Ascension event and the return of the Christ consciousness in 5D. The energy coming into the Earth is coming from the Sun, but they lie to you. The Aurora Borealis actually comes from the Sun, inside the Earth, because the Earth is hollow. All the planets are changing. Mars doesn't even have ice caps. There is also a hurricane on Mars the size of Texas that hasn't dissipated at all for a decade. All planets are undergoing global climate change. Nothing to do with humanity. There is a great web of energy flowing throughout all of creation. When we enter that infrared barrier, the energy of our sun goes up and up and up. When it gets to a certain point, it is like resonance oscillator until it gets to a certain point where it will collapse the field to the core. That's what's called the event. Nothing can stop what is coming. When it collapses to the core, it will start resonating louder and louder until it jumps an octave, which in this case it will jump 2 octaves, from 3D to 5D. It is already in the process of starting to go up octaves in the core. That is why it is increasing the energy on Earth and all the other planets, and then it blows outward and envelops every planet, causing it to rise as well. This is the ascension event, and the clique has known it all along, and they have been trying to hijack it to be a negative event. But it is not a negative event, it is a positive event. NASA doesn't even show it. They have pictures of the space station, and they sent me pictures in a mail from the couple in India. They can see it. 4D to 5D Earth is forming in orbit behind us. The separation between positive and negative timelines has already occurred. And that's all for today. Thanks a lot, dear friend.